Hi, and welcome to my deck tech. My name is Colin O'Clock at Colin O'Clock on Twitter, and this is a special project that Amara, aka Goddess of Blunder, put on for a budget deck exchange for the holidays. And I was super excited about this one and wanted to do a quick deck tech on it because I uh, I was really excited. Uh, the creators got together, exchanged names, and put a secret like wish list together to say like, what type of deck do you like, or colors, or whatever. And the person I got, their wish list just said surprise me, and I was like, oh no. Um, so I did a little bit of Twitter stalking. And went and saw this post not too long ago. It says, "Stop everything you're doing, stop breathing, stop your heart from beating, do nothing unless it's following this chain letter styled meme and post a gift of an anime you really enjoy." And I saw this and I was like, I know this anime. I love this anime. It's been so long since I saw it. And all of a sudden, I had this idea to do a theme deck. So today we are doing Vampire Hunter EDH, Vampire Hunter D deck. And because it's a budget deck and that's the restriction, I wanted to do something that was super on theme. And I started having the idea of making different cards represent different characters. And what ended up happening is that every single card in the deck, aside from the basic lands, actually is now represented in the movie. So we're gonna get right to it. First, we have the intro, and it says the story takes place in the distant future when mutants and demons sliver through a world of darkness. And this is really important because it's not just a vampire deck. You can't just do vampires because there's all sorts of weird stuff in this world. So as we go through, you'll see a little bit more, but it opens up with Doris Lang, and Doris Lang is just traveling through the woods, minding her own business, like the innocent traveler here. Lucy Westerna, the alternate art for this card, is in the deck, and I thought this was really fitting because she starts out as a human, and I should say, by the way, spoiler alert, gets bit by a vampire. That's our first card. Then moving along, she's hunting this weird creature thing, and it ends up getting her horse, which is a really sad moment. This is our first monster, Insatiable Hemophage, and this is really cool because it allows you to mutate onto things like vampires and demons and the other things in the deck. I like this card because it has death touch, which is really nice. And even though there's not a whole lot of mutate in here, you'll still be able to get that to trigger potentially more than once. So a sad cut from the deck was Nightmare. I was going to include the horse Nightmare as Doris's horse, but that was one of the cuts that didn't make it. Next, we have Doris's Whip, which I'm using Swashbuckler's Whip. Whip of Erebos unfortunately didn't fit in the budget, but there was a couple of other whip style cards. Live Wire Lash is really cool, and there's two lashes that allow you to, it gives +1/+1 for every swamp that you control. I thought that would be really cool to put in the deck because there's a ton of swamps, but I really wanted to use a new card. And I think having a mana sink for the ability 8 tap discover 10 might come in handy in a budget style game. So this is really cool. Swashbuckler's Whip. Then we have Count Magnus Lee. He's the big bad vampire of the movie, and for that I'm using Sengir the Dark Baron. I'm using Sengir for a couple of reasons. One, like Sengir is like head of a house, and also a noble, which it comes up a lot in the themes of the movie, that there's this vampire nobility, and people want to be part of the nobility, and it's so important. So when I started this deck, I started it as a like aristocrat style deck, and I thought this would be cool as like a top end. But it just turns out it's a cool flyer. There's some relevant abilities. I really like Sengir the Dark Baron as a card. All right, next up, we have the second monsters that show up on screen. These little crawly dudes look a lot like Cavern Whisperer here. This is a discard mutate ability and also a nightmare. Thought that was really fitting. Then we have D, the main character, and for D, I also was looking up other vampire nobles and found Krovax, and the original Krovax card has some sacrifice abilities. I'm going to put that as like an alternate commander that you could switch out in the deck, but Ascendant Evankar was more of a like, hey, let's pump the team, let's hurt the other players that aren't playing black creatures. And I thought this was pretty cool because it's a vampire, it's a noble, and someone who at one time was a hero. The other part of this that I thought I'd tie in now is that Provax has the errata from Vampire is now Phyrexian Vampire Noble, and D is a mix, human vampire called a Dhampir, and I thought that, hey, like there's no like human vampires in Magic, but a cool way to represent that, like, you know, sort of mutated half half-breed type thing would be to include Phyrexian as the Dhampir's other half, and that will come up again later. Then we have D's horse, Diamond Mare. Doris's little brother at one point in the movie comments about this like robot horse, basically. So this is our artifact horse. The reason I use Diamond Mare, there are, I think, a couple of artifact horses, but this ended up turning into a deck that has quite a few life gain synergies. So this is a cool card, and I thought that would be fun for just the incremental life gains. Then we have Doris's Bite Mark, Vampire's Kiss. This is another life gain card, and it's also to help cycle through cards. The blood tokens will come up again. This is a good way to sort of get through your deck without card draw. One of the cards I tried to include in the deck was actually representative of Doris's Collar, which was Basilisk Collar. I didn't realize Basilisk Collar is like a $5 card, so that got cut for the budget also. Then we have the sheep getting chased, and this was like just iconic art. Like this sheep just looks like it's like living its best life over here. There aren't too many mono black cards with sheep or rams represented on them, so To the Slaughter is one of our removal spells. It's not a great removal spell. Target player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If you have Delirium, they do both. And I thought, hey, sometimes when you're playing against like a Voltron deck or something, indestructible creatures, the last one on the board after a board wipe, the sacrifice effects come in handy. So fun to include here, mainly for the art, this sheep getting chased by the red cloud. Then we have Doris's little brother. I use Desperate Farmer here in this scene. The brother is like trying to save that sheep. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. This also helps with life gain. This is another like flavor include. It's not the best card, but it's relevant to them being farmers and trying to save these animals. And this could also now be Doris's horse, since I had to cut Nightmare out of the deck. Next, we have the bats, Dirge Bats. Now, this is a super quick scene with bats in it, but I really wanted to include Dirge Bat because it's probably the best mutate card there. Some good targeted removal, give something flying that doesn't have flying. and it has flash, which is great against control strategies if you want to leave it up for a surprise later. Moving along, we have Greco-Roman. Greco is kind of a jerk, uh, and Sir Conrad is kind of a jerk card. You know, people see Sir Conrad and they're like, oh no. But the deck needs a win condition, and this sort of helps with that. Two, there's this scene Greco's holding up here a candle, but it reminded me of Sir Conrad holding up this little lantern, skull lantern. Greco, son of the mayor, you know, sort of like a noble position, I think fits the Sir Conrad vibe. And yeah, that will come up later also. Okay, then Greco throws Doris under the bus for having been bitten by a vampire, and the town all comes together. And here we have mobilized district. Everyone's coming together. This is one of the utility lands in the deck. Again, just sort of for fun and flavor, there is a mono black card with like a human mob, and it's a 6-drop, and it's not a good card. So that did not make the cut, and we used mobilized district instead. Then we have Greco's dad, the mayor. For the mayor, I've chosen a Jaren corrupted bishop. One, because politicians can often be corrupted, but two, like this position of power that Jaren has is similar. In the movie, Greco's dad is kind of like, you know, a good guy. He seems fair at least, but I thought one, like being able to make some human tokens for sacrificing or fodder or whatever it is, certainly helps with a little bit of that aristocrat stuff. And number two, if we could have like a demon pop out, Ormondal the Corruptor, flying trample, lifelink, sack outlet, drawing cards. Really would be special. You have to have 13 life to do it, but there's ways to pay life, lose life, and gain life in the deck, so you might get there. Then we have Dr. Faringo, and I really wanted to include Yawgmoth in the deck. There's like, it's perfect. It's mono black physician, right? Like, great. Dr. Faringo also in this scene is like a pretty good dude. He's like trying to protect Doris from going to this like horrible like outcast land or whatever. We had to come up with something other than Yawgmoth. I was looking at other humans and clerics and things like that, and I think Jadar was a good representation. Just one, because of these like little circular glasses I think Jadar is wearing. Two, being able to create tokens helps with the synergies for sacrifice and death triggers in the deck. So that's Dr. Faringo. Then we have the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper in this movie is also being a little bit of a jerk. He's like, hey, I can't sell you anything to Doris because people are in my store like wanting to buy things, but know that a vampire was here. They'll not buy things from me. So the Skullport merchant was really good. The buy something or move along. It's like, you know, a little bit of a jerky shopkeep here. And also helps with one, ramp. There's not a whole lot of ramp in the deck. I was looking for ways to do some ramp. But two, we wanted to be able to sacrifice creatures. It's another card draw outlet. So at least it would cycle a card if you needed to. Then we have D's sword, Eater of Virtue. I thought this would be a really cool include, mainly because there's a lot of different creatures with a lot of different abilities. Some have flying, menace, whatever. So to include some of those abilities on the sword once they die or are exiled with Eater of Virtue, then it gains that ability. So you're sort of building up this like cool creature who wields this sword. Then they started talking about the moon and how the moon is bad for the vampires, and so we have Bad Moon. Black creatures get +1/+1, and that's going to help out the table if there's other black creatures. But like, when do you get to throw Bad Moon in an EDH deck? This is a cool card, so very relevant to the story. And how much like the movie's castle does Voldarian Estate look like? This is almost like uncanny. I was like, whoa, okay, we have to include Voldarian Estate in here. There's again not a whole lot of relevant abilities here. Maybe you create blood tokens with it, but for the most part, it's just here because of the art is like spot on for this scene. Then you have Dee's left hand, and like another perfect card for this, Hand of Vecna. It's actually that person's left hand. Another way to make your creature super big, and another way to pay life, which, you know, if you wanted to get to Jaren's 13 life, this is a way to do it. Pay 1 life for each card in your hand to equip. Left hand comes up a few times and sort of takes on a role of its own throughout the movie, and I thought that was very fitting for this card. Then you have the werewolf. I think this is the driver for the next couple of characters. In the lore I was reading about, it mentions a werewolf driver. This werewolf shows up to the house that Doris and Dee and her brother are in, and is actually in a graveyard when it arrives. Like, there's this quick shot of a graveyard, so Graveyard Trespasser was a great option here. One, it's a good way to just get rid of some iffy cards in opponents' graveyards. It also helps with the gain life and lose life themes in the deck. So the only regret I have is that it will make someone track day-night, and it is the only card in the deck that has day-night, but also it's just very fitting for the deck. So sacrifice a little bit of time flipping day and night to include this one. Then we have Ray Ginsai, and for Ray, I was having a little bit of trouble figuring out who Ray should be. In the end, I chose the Raven Man for a couple of reasons. Ray is a mutant, they say, and so, like, sort of not a man, I guess, not a regular human. He's known for being a good fighter and like a warrior, but also can twist like time and dimensions and things like that. So I thought a wizard would be fitting for that, and the Raven Man, who is limb dual, can do stuff like turn into ravens and stuff like that. So and he's got the white hair coming up, so like the art, I actually had like the showcase version of this card and went to my LGS to get the regular version because I really wanted that white hair, and being able to make opponents discard cards but also create the tokens, the blackbirds for sacrifice or fodder or whatever. I thought this was a really good option. Dee's Cloak of the Bat. This is just an iconic shot from the movie, and it was perfect for Cloak of the Bat. Again, a lot of the creatures in the deck already have flying, so this mostly is giving haste. Some of them don't have flying, but really wanted to highlight this scene in the movie, and Dee's Cloak comes up in a couple of times, helps him fly across like a gorge and stuff like that. Then you have Ray Ginsei's necklace. Here, the necklace looked to me a little bit like Wayfarer's Bauble, and I was really trying to get ways to include mana rocks. So this is one of the pieces of ramp in the deck, and that's the necklace there. And then we have another mana rock, Dee's Stone, which in the beginning fight scene is like, this is as this wound is healing, but it was covered in blood. So having it be the worn Power Stone, I thought was really fitting, and later on this will come up again. Then you have Lamika, who is a vampire noble, and again, like I had trouble like deciding, okay, Lamika is sort of a main character and she should be legendary maybe, but but she also should be a noble. Like that was important. So I have all these like non-legendary vampire cards lined up, and I couldn't get Drana from my LGS, and I don't have a copy of Drana sitting around anywhere. But I also thought that this was a really cool card from this is from the March of the Machines Aftermath set, which nobody really, I don't know if a lot of people have seen these cards even. So it has Madness, which there's a little bit of discard in the deck. It has Lifelink, and it pumps the team, so for other vampires. So I thought this was a cool include, and Lamika will come up again later in the story and in the deck. Funny moment in the movie. Lamika and Ray can't kill D when they try to the first time, and the Count is just sitting here like really like distraught that they didn't do it. He laughs about it afterwards, but this card, Crushing Disappointment, was so fitting for it. It's a little high of a rate for the two cards drawn, and I have other card draw in the deck, but again, just a really fitting moment for this scene in the movie. Then you have Lamika talking to the portrait of Dracula. I actually combined these two screens because you see the portrait and then they cut to her. But I had been looking through cards trying to find cards that would fit with the vibe of the movie, and I saw Bloodline Culling, and as soon as I saw this scene I was like, oh my god, that portrait. This is sort of a targeted board wipe. It's also creature token hate, so if anyone is going wide, you have a option for dealing with that in the deck. Then right afterwards, there's a heated discussion between Lamika and Ray, and Ray sort of grabs her arm, and Lamika like gives him a big slap. And this is the pointed discussion. So this is a little bit of a better rate. You draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, and create a blood token. The blood token again helps with discard and card draw, just filtering through the deck. Then you have the Castle's Drawbridge, and what better than crashing Drawbridge for that? This will give all of your creatures haste, which is really nice. There's like a scene later in this movie where the Drawbridge actually crashes down on a monster, but I thought this was just too good not to include in the deck. Then you have our third monster. D goes into this drawbridge. That's when he's flying and sort of just gets in there. And in the castle, there's just this weird cave of monsters. So you have our third monster, the Chittering Harvester. And this is another sacrifice effect when you mutate. Then you have the fourth monster. This one here is supposed to be Grey Merchant of Asphodel. I think with this art, it kind of looks like that, the facial structure or shape, compared to Grey Merchant's mask, and also sort of hunchbacky, and the arm shape is very similar in the art. And this is a way with all the black mana pips that you have to sort of also help end the game. Whenever you enter the battlefield with this, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black, and you gain that much life. Then this robot walks by, like half robot, half, like has an eyeball and a brain sticking out, but it's just this lone robot that walks across the screen. And so you have your lone robot, Solemn Simulacrum, which also helps with ramp and card draw. Good fodder for card draw. And then D turns on this stone that we saw earlier, the Worn Power Stone. And it's now the Pristine Talisman, which helps with the life gain and also with mana ramp. Okay, then you see D had turned on this Power Stone, and all the monsters are sort of like, no, whatever, and he's just walking through what is Hidden Necropolis. This is one of the new caves, and again, just a nice mana sink to be able to do the Discover 4 if you have too many lands looking for more action. Then you have the fifth monster. D starts fighting this weird flying thing, and for that I used Cadaver Imp. I was really trying to find like Gravedigger because I wanted to be able to return creatures back from the graveyard, and it didn't really fit this weird flying creature thing. And while I was looking through other cards, I found Cadaver Imp and thought, oh, this is perfect. It's got like the pointy wings, and it's my Gravedigger, and it flies. Then you have the sixth monster, which is this big giant. And I was looking at trying to get Grave Titan in also. It's not really, the monster doesn't really throw zombies. In fact, it actually is holding like a shiny ball in its hand that it throws at D, and so Shakedown Heavy was another great option for this, just holding that little ball of light, but also being an ogre would be a pretty big monster, and at 3 mana, 6/4. Draw some cards if your opponent doesn't want to take 6 damage. I think uh, it's a great include in the deck with Menace, and if you can mutate like the Dirge Bat on it or something, then all of a sudden you have a 6/4 flying Menace. It gets a little out of control. Next, we have Dogged Pursuit, and so D is going through these tunnels and persisting no matter what, to get after the count. And going through this tunnel reminded me of this card, which it features Kaya going through a tunnel, but also the synergy in the deck for the loss of life and the gain of life. And I thought it was funny, the actual name Dogged. There's these like gargoyles, almost dogs. A spirit comes out of, and the spirit looks like a dog, and it's our 7th monster, Chupacabra Echo. So this is another new card from Lost Caverns of Ixalan that I thought was a really cool include. This thing sort of looks like a little bit of a wolf, but is also this like ghostly spirit, and gets stabbed, and Chupacabra Echo is holding some arrows or something in it. So very fitting for the scene here, and good removal. Then we have the 8th monster, Bran, Executioner Thane, and this is just a face-to-face match. And this guy, I don't even know like what it's supposed to be, but it looks like it has vampire teeth, but sort of mutant-y at the same time. So I'm not sure that it's a Dampier, but I thought, hey, this would be a really good spot to put Bran in, and again with a little bit of the aristocrat-y theme, that life gain and life loss will be helpful. Then we have the Skeletons, Read the Bones, and Skeletal Scrying, 2 good card draw options in mono black. The other card I was looking at here was Reassembling Skeleton, but I just wasn't able to fit it in the deck. But these skeleton-themed card draw spells made it in. Then this is another one where the scene in the movie just triggered this, oh my goodness, I know this card. D like steps into the water, and the water sort of ripples out, and Visions of Dread, while you don't see like the monsters reflected in the water, you see this thing stepping into the water and the water rippling out. This is also a really cool card to reanimate. It's probably the worst creature in an opponent's graveyard, but there's still relevant options, and sometimes if it's the only one, it's a really great one. It also has flashback, and with Ascendant Evancar being 6 mana, this only costs 4 mana to do from the graveyard, so it is effective in the graveyard, which will come up later also. Then we have the 3 Weird Sisters. They actually like introduce themselves as the 3 sisters. And Henrika Damnathi was the other vampire legendary noble that I was going to have Lamika be, but this alternate art of Henrika Damnathi as the 3 Weird Sisters was a perfect fit for the 3 three sisters in the movie. It also gives sacrifice, card draw, and on the other side, this flying death touch lifelink creature. So super cool to include here. The three sisters do transform into snakes, the snake woman, and so I've included a couple snakes here. One is Gravebreaker Lamia, and Gravebreaker Lamia has lifelink, can be mutated on, and can put something into the graveyard when it enters the battlefield. So Visions of Dread is one target for Gravebreaker Lamia that you can, if you don't have any recursion in your hand, you could just find Visions of Dread, put that in there, and then use that. Soul Coil Viper is recursion, and this is also from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and I really wanted to include some new cards just because it's fun and exciting to play with new cards. Then there's a team of monsters that go and attack Doris and her brother while Dee is being like held hostage by the three sisters snake ladies. And this character in particular, the ninth monster, there was a couple of cards that I was looking at for this monster. I think Woe Strider was something where it's, it sort of has the hunchback. It makes the makes the goat token. It gives you a sacrifice outlet to scry, and it has escape. So again, this is the other target for Gravebreaker Lamia. If you don't have anything else, you could put Woe Strider in the graveyard and then escape it. And I really like Woe Strider in the deck. The other option that I was looking for and I couldn't get a copy of was there is a version of Golem that is in the commander decks, and I think it says it's a 1/1 with Skulk, and it says for any opponent dealt damage by Golem this game, they lose life equal to the life you gain. It'd be really fitting in, with the life gains theme. So that's a recommended upgrade. If you're interested, you could also do something like Mere Battlesphere. This monster shoots stuff out of its back. What it shoots out are spiders, and so these little red spiders. This is our enchantment removal in mono black. Whoop whoop, feed the swarm. A good option in any mono black deck, and this was like a really good scene to include this spiders flying out of the golem's back to go toward the humans. Then you have the messengers. These messengers come and like spook the hotel manager or inn manager or whatever it is that when they come to this room. And so I thought Dread Presence was very fitting for them. I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe it's an artifact robot-y type creature. There's a couple of other monsters that we could have included, but Dread Presence for the card draw and for the damage and life gain was also just very synergistic for the deck. And the messenger brings the Time Bewitching Incense Candle. This is like super bad for vampires and can stop them in their tracks. And I have to apologize in advance. Like, Blood Tallow Candle is not the best card, but it was so fitting for the deck. So Blood Tallow Candle made it into the deck for the Time Bewitching Incense Candle. Then Dee escapes from the weird sisters and finds Doris, and they go and they find that her brother has been kidnapped, and there's this ransom note written only in vampire language, and so this is our sign in blood. And I wanted to include the cool copy of this card in the deck. The budget of $50, I did the budget as like, hey, what's the cheapest versions of the cards? Okay, it's under the $50, but there's a couple of foils and nicer versions of the card in here to spice up the deck a little bit. All right, then there's this lamp on the carriage when Doris and the doctor go looking for her brother, and this was another opportunity for me to get ramp into the deck. Seer's Lantern is a really cool mono-colored mana rock for this. It has the scry ability as a mana sink, so you're never without something to do. Something you could do is upgrade this to like a soul guide lantern or one of the like graveyard hate lanterns, but I thought having the ramp and the scry ability was better in a budget deck with trying to just get through the game and keep moving through the deck. All right, then Doris learns that the doctor is a vampire now, and she has this gruesome realization. Oh my god, not you too. So we have gruesome realization, and this is another, hey, draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. This is also another, small little creatures hate. If your opponent has a lot of 1/1 tokens or something along those lines, give them all -1/-1 until the end of turn. All right, then we have the Vampire Dr. Faringo, and here I've used the Vampire Cleric, so we included the Cleric for Doctor's clerichood, I guess, when we think about doctors and magic. As Preacher of the Schism, this is a new Lost Caverns of Ixalan card, and really cool. Death Touch 2/4. When it attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, you get 1/1 white vampire with lifelink, so that helps with sacrifice and life gain. Or if it attacks while you have the most life or tied for the most life, it's card draw. You draw a card and lose a life. So good abilities on a vampire. This one doesn't have flying or menace, but again, something cool to mutate on to give it, one of those relevant abilities. All right, then Lamika's pulled this weapon out a couple of times. Here she's going to stab Doris because she's jealous and doesn't want her to become a vampire and doesn't want the Count to turn her into a vampire, her dad, the Count. So Bloodthirsty Blade, this was like shining red. I was, like, oh, of course, perfect. This is cool, like little, ways to get around a big creature that your opponent has. Hey, why not just equip it and goad it, get it a little bigger while you're at it and make someone else deal with it. Then you have Ray Ginsei's Spike, Quietus Spike. In this scene, Ray has the candle and it's finally working. It didn't work the last time he tried to fight D, and actually gets this spike into D and effectively kills D. There's a little bit of a half-life there, so I think this Quietus Spike was super fitting for this. Moving through the movie, you have D, like the left hand comes to save D, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but okay. Then Lamika is talking to the Count about, hey, you can't like bring this human into vampirehood, like we're a noble family, all these things. And the Count is like, what do you mean? Like, don't you know who your mom was? And hey, by the way, you're a Dhampir too. And so Lamika finds out she's not noble. She's in the noble house, but like she's half human, half vampire. So we bring back the Phyrexian vampire creature type for the Dhampir. And this one is Kinzu of the Bleak Coven, which is a really cool ability in a budget deck. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you may pay 2 life and exile it. If you do, create a copy of it, except it's a 1/1 and has Toxic 1. Now, the deck is not trying to kill people with Infect, but hey, if enough of them turn into 1/1 toxic creatures and they're evasive, flying, menace, whatever it is, maybe you get there with it. Okay. I don't really know very much about this weird red ball. I was looking it up. I found there is on the Vampire Hunter D wiki, talks about Crimson Stitchwort's Red Cloud. Now, Crimson Stitchwort is not in this movie, but it talks about this cloud that goes and destroys people, and I think this is that cloud. So the ball is actually coming for D to kill D. This is what got the sheep early on in the movie. and it's just sort of this weird presence, right? Like just going around and like eradicating things. So Sphere of Annihilation was a really good choice here. It is again like not the most effective board wipe or way to get rid of things, but at the same time it was very fitting for the flavor of the movie and theme. Then you have D waking up. So right before the red cloud gets D, like this thing is on top of D, ready to consume him or like eat him alive. And D's left hand has like woken him up, and the left hand is like knocking on D, saying, "Wake up, D! Wake up! Wake up!" And so. Originally, I had slotted here Edgar's Awakening, which I thought would be a very fitting card, but Edgar's Awakening is like 5 mana, and I thought another chance was, another fitting card title for what's happening here, but also a cool new card. I've drafted with this a couple times. A really effective way of getting stuff into your graveyard and getting 2 creatures back instead of 1, I thought would be better in a budget deck. Then Ray comes to the wedding with the candle, and all of these vampires are coming in, like following the Count and Doris to the wedding, and Ray interrupts them and says like, "I'm going to kill you now," and busts out this candle, and the Count is even affected by it, but this is the mob of vampires that are following them, affected by this candle. And so Crippling Fear, even though you're probably never going to choose Vampire, was a really fitting card for this, and it could be a one-sided board wipe for you. So good option here for removal and fitting point in the movie. All right, so Ray, it turns out, doesn't do very well in this fight against the Count, and we use Victimize here. Ray is thrown up against the wall and sacrificed in a very brutal manner. So Victimize was a good way for recursion and to represent Ray dying. But the flavor text, but die knowing that your pathetic life will yield a great bounty for me, which feels very much like the Count. Okay, then they're at the wedding. They're getting set for the wedding, and it pans across this whole coven of different vampires. And so we have Vainwitch Coven. I think this is the most expensive card in the deck, and this is a very cool option for recursion in a life gain deck. It says it's a 3/3 menace. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 1 black. If you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So just a good way to keep getting back the creatures that have been dying, to the Death Touchers and what have you. Also, having a menace creature that you can mutate on, always a good thing. Okay, then D comes in and interrupts the wedding and starts the hostile negotiations. The card here, but out of nowhere, this dagger comes in and hits the Count in the face and interrupts things. So hostile negotiations was a good card to choose here. This is mainly for the card draw. I always think cards like this are really fun especially in multiplayer. Like, hey, I got this little secret mini game that you have to figure out, and being able to get 3 cards into your hand and 3 other cards into your graveyard is great for this deck. So then we get to Enslave, where the Count is controlling Doris, and D has sort of done away with the Count here. The Count's hanging on for dear life and telling Doris to avenge him. Doris picks up the spike, and I thought this card was very fitting because of the T-pose in Enslave, the T-pose in the background that the Count has here. It's also just a fun card to be able to deal with a big creature that you're not otherwise able to deal with. Then this was a very niche card. I found this while doing like deep dives into Scourge. The Count's death, we're using Final Punishment. Again, in the T-pose here, and very weird niche card. It says target player loses life equal to the damage dealt to them this turn. And I thought that that was a really cool, like, unexpected card. When you do a budget deck, it's fun to throw like one or two cards that you wouldn't see coming. And I think this is that card for me, the Final Punishment. Then D has victoriously ridden off into the distance, and Doris and her little brother say goodbye, and D continues on with this existence. And so we use Forever Young here, a way to get creatures back out of your graveyard and draw a card. But also, this is a nice little combo with Sir Conrad the Grim. If you have a lot of cards in your graveyard and get them out of there, it's a way to end the game. So D rides off into the distance, and we see the original GIF that the person who told me to surprise them included in their Twitter post. D riding off into the distance at the end of the movie, and that is the end of the deck tech. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun building this deck. There's a lot of cool options to upgrade or change cards around, and I can't wait to see what happens with it. Thank you again, and have a great day. Bye.